Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Naruto took the path of becoming a puppeteer. Young Naruto is prohibited from being ninja of the leaf. Left to his own devices, he takes an unusual path to power as a puppeteer. Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video, and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 17. Tamayanakara awoke once. Everything hurt. She tried to open her eyes, but she couldn't. She tried again, and this time whatever muck held them shut gave way. She wasn't outside anymore. She didn't see that horrible rubber ninja. Her teammates or her sensei must have come for her. She tried to turn her head, but that hurt, too. What had happened to her that everything hurt? Then she felt it. Her skin was on fire, her stomach felt like it was going to burst. Okami. Number 2 groaned in pain. Then Taro, number 4 came into view. And Naruto, the blonde boy who was so handsome, so strong. Her sensei was here in person and was operating his puppet at the same time. She felt grateful, and nervous that so much help was necessary for her. They were doing something to her. Number 3 was at her feet. Number 1 was holding down her head. The pain, it hurt worse. Didn't any of them learn any medical jutsu? It felt like they were tearing her apart. Her eyes fixed on Naruto. He was looking at her. He was terrified. She kept staring up at him, hoping, praying. As the blackness swirled at the edge of her field of vision, she could only think of Naruto. She had gone from being an idiot student to a powerful ninja because of him. She had left her home and her family behind without a thought because he asked it. She had walked and run and swam from one end of the elemental countries because he asked it. If she survived this, if she lived, she would tell her sensei how she felt about him. She had counted on him to save her, and he did. He was always there, always strong, always a pillar in her heart. She swore to herself. Let me live so that I can grow stronger for my sensei, so that I can be what he needs from me. Naruto walked over to the bed where his student was recuperating. He had felt so guilty about her injuries that he set her up, after field triage, in the safe house he currently inhabited. It had been 3 days. She looked better and was drinking fluids. But she was still awfully pale. This whole thing was a vivid reminder of one of the main benefits of serving a ninja village, proper medical services. Everything had been cobbled together. She had nearly died twice because Naruto and his team didn't know what they were doing, and didn't have basic supplies. Her bandages were stolen from a clinic in the nearby village. The antibiotics were stolen from a veterinarian. The jutsu used to repair some of the damage had also been stolen, much earlier, from Hidden Leaf. It was sheer audacity that number 2 was still alive. She was their primary healer. Naruto only had rudimentary healing skills, and number 3 was scarcely any better. Number 1 knew as much as any civilian hunter out in the woods. Naruto sat on a stool and looked at the girl's easy breathing. She was finally sleeping well. They'd kept infection out, even though her intestines had been cut. Number 2 was very lucky, foolhardy but very lucky. Naruto looked over the saline drip. It would need to be changed within the hour. He made to stand up when a hand snaked out and grasped his. "You're awake," Naruto said. "I was tired of sleeping," number 2 said. "Your body needs the time and energy to heal. Stop lecturing. I know you've never taken to the healing arts." Naruto smiled. "True enough. But I've had my fair share of injuries. Some heal slowly, some never heal at all." His students still didn't know about his main weakness, his missing leg. That Naruto would keep hidden for as long as possible. "I'll be good as new, number 4. Naruto was confused for a moment. His student had known his true name for some time now, but she'd never used that name. If she addressed him by name, she said, "Taro. Is there anything I can get you? I have several jutsu scrolls you've never seen before. I won't allow you to practice them, but you can read them." Number 2 smiled. "That sounds nice. My brain feels like it's rotting." Naruto stood up and walked into his sleeping quarters. He kept a stash of scrolls there. It took just a few minutes to find a few interesting scrolls. Naruto walked back to the room where his student was staying. Here you are. Thank you. Would you do me another favor, number 2? Naruto shrugged. Sure. What can I do? Call me Mokurin, sensei. That took Naruto back. It wasn't her true name. The Jonin Council back in Grass had informed Naruto of the name of each of his students. But he had never used them, and he didn't know what this new name meant. She wasn't delicate like the flower name she had just adopted. She was stronger than the thickest tree in the forest. I will call you number 2. Please sensei. Call me Mokurin. Naruto leaned away from his student. Something was going on here. Something odd, something off. He was caught off guard when number 2's hand reached out and snagged Naruto's hand. She had his hand to her lips before he could react. It felt strange. Warm, wet. The lips on his hand were the first time he'd been touched by another human, in a long, long time. Doctors teaching him to use his prosthesis in Hidden Leaf? That Suna ninja who had kicked Naruto out of an early model Taro puppet? Years. Naruto blinked twice, 3 times. Then he remembered the lips, the aggressive lips, on his hand. He snatched his hand back. What are you doing? Sensei. Sensei, we're alone. Number 2, I don't know what you want. I want you, Naruto. I thought you were so cool and powerful when I just saw your Taro puppet, I'd have followed you anywhere. I owe you so much. I admired and respected you, but you're my age. You're beautiful. I don't just have to admire you, sensei. I want you, Naruto. I want to be yours. Naruto's brain almost shut down at that declaration. No one had ever claimed to love him, to want him. Naruto didn't know what to do. He was so advanced as a ninja, but his mind had never turned to girls. He thought of himself as broken, as damaged. This didn't make any sense. I don't understand, number 2. She sat up in bed. Naruto wanted to push her back down so she wouldn't injure her stitches, and then he thought again. He wanted to get away from this girl who was causing his head so much pain. He didn't understand. It didn't make sense. She reached out to grab his hand again. Please, sit back down. You're going to ranger yourself, number 2. No. Let me explain. My fondness for you, my admiration, it turned to love, Naruto. Now, you're nursing me back to health. I can't imagine anything more romantic. Naruto stood up and headed for the door. I'll be back in an hour. Read your scrolls, number 2. We shall not speak of this again. He was gone before number 2 could say anything. She spent the next hour sobbing. Time passed slowly in Naruto's current stronghold. Numbers 1 and 3 didn't stay long before fleeing back out into the field. They could feel the tension, even if they didn't understand it. Naruto took to climbing inside his Taro puppet and leaving on missions with numbers 1 and 3. He left a shadow clone behind to tend to number 2. No one said anything, but it all unraveled. Years of working together was gone. The comfort of being a team was disrupted. They were back to their raw genin days. Attacks against Rice Country targets slowed to a halt. Naruto's plan to fully blood his students, and himself, slowed. Before he could truly become strong as he'd promised to do, he needed to perfect his present skills. But if he couldn't keep his students safe, if he couldn't fulfill his obligations to them, if he couldn't even stand to be touched, then what value was power? It was a most uncomfortable month. Naruto managed to resume their raiding 5 weeks after number 2 had been injured. His female student refused to look at Naruto or the Taro puppet. They began the raid, but no one was really into it. The magic was gone. Indeed, in the 13 hours they traveled between Wave and Lightning, the only highlight was running into some kind of caravan of sound ninjas carting the last Uchiha, Sasuke, off to meet with Orochimaru. Taro stayed his team while he deployed a special series of micro-puppets, the ones that carried a special poison developed by Kabuto. Here, finally, was a worthy test subject. An Uchiha being willingly led away from Hidden Leaf. Sasuke didn't seem to notice the pain of a few micro-puppets injecting him with a small dose of an optic nerve poison. Taro gestured for his team to attack, but he singled Sasuke out for safe passage. The poison took time to take hold. Naruto wanted to know the true effects. Sasuke would live today, who knew what tomorrow had in store for him. Taro signaled. The brutal attack rained down on the sound ninja. Number 2 held nothing back. She used every horrifying, lethal type of medical perversion she could think of. Arms exploded, hearts and lungs liquefied, gashes self-cauterized themselves across torsos. Number 3 showed just why he would eventually be classed an S-rank ninja. Within a few years his repertoire would be well known and feared. Skin burned, ninjas were cut in half from a great distance, steam batted powerful ninjas around like they were toy ships in a storm. Number 1 preferred to demonstrate his sword and dagger skills on a night like this one. He hadn't been on the field long enough to prepare any significant traps, but he had a few quick surprises ready. He was about to test out some new types of distraction traps when 2 wounded ninjas managed to grab Sasuke and flee the field. Taro signaled that they wouldn't be pursuing. He had a test to run, after all. He wanted to see the effects of the new poison on the Sharingan. Hours later the group arrived at the safe house in Lightning Country. Naruto crawled out of Taro. He expected to have to explain about his order concerning the Uchiha. Instead, number 2 dropped a bombshell. The Uchiha was the last of their concern. This was my last mission, sensei. I believe I have learned everything you have to teach me. Her voice was strained and brittle. No, number 2. I am sure there is more that all of us can help you with. No, number 2 said more firmly. I have learned everything that I want to from you. I need to map my own course now. Numbers 1 and 3 were surprisingly quiet. They had both wondered what had happened between numbers 2 and 4, but whatever it was seemed to be playing itself out now. The crumbling of their team was now complete. Is there anything I can do, Naruto asked, to change your mind? Number 2 bit her lip and shook her head. I made myself clear to you. It's too hard to be here now. Naruto looked sad, but he nodded. As much as he wanted number 2 to remain, he couldn't countenance what she seemed to want from him. If this was what she needed, then Naruto had to let her go. What are your plans, number 2? I will return and visit my parents for a time. Beyond that, I do not know. I have no interest in returning to serve grass. They were wrong then to expel you, they remain wrong now. Number 1 stepped over to whisper to number 2. Number 3 looked upset, but he let the others figure it out. Then go with my blessing, my dear student. This will likely be a complete severing of ties, then. With your departure, I will have to destroy the safe houses you know about for our continued security. I know, sensei. I would never speak of you, but it is sensible in any case. Thank you, number 2. More than setting up new bolt holes, other things will have to change soon. This life I live will soon be gone, number 2. Once you leave, I don't know that we'll ever run into each other again. That's alright. It's too hard staying here, ignoring reality. You helped to make me strong, and for that I am thankful. But you broke my heart, sensei. I cannot just overlook that. I have to find my own path now. 20 minutes later, after saying goodbye to her teammates but not hugging or touching her former sensei, number 2 left the safe house. Naruto suspected and feared that he would never see his student again. The truth would be far worse. /N, this is my long-planned exploration of number 2. Those who complained about not knowing the students' names now have one of them. Most of the S-ranked ninja featured in Naruto seem to have psychiatric dysfunctions. Naruto, growing up the way he did and always hiding inside puppets, is just as broken as Haku or Sasori. His power, like all power, comes at a severe cost. He seems willing to pay it, even if all the people around him are not. More crumbling to come. The Golden Age is over. Chapter 18. Tamayana Carol let herself discreetly into her parents' home in Grass Country. She didn't want anyone to know she was back. Mom. There was a noise from the upstairs. Kara ghosted upstairs. Her mother was cleaning the floor. Kara? What are you doing here? I thought you were off training. Kara's mother was a civilian. She didn't understand the things Kara explained. Had she been a ninja, seeing her daughter like this would have been alarming. I'm fine, Mom. I decided to part ways with my sensei. Oh. He didn't try to take advantage of you, did he? A bitter laugh erupted from Kara's body. No, nothing like that. Okay. I'm making my special ramen tonight. Would you like to stay? Yes, Mom. I'd like to stay. May I remain here for a few days? Kara's mother smiled. Yes. I would love that. Where's Dad? Trying to trade our old equipment for some better implements. Kara's family had been farming for generations. Daikon, sweet potato, onion, eggplant, and a variety of other vegetables. The conditions weren't great for growing rice here. The pair began talking about safe topics. Kara's mom didn't understand enough to ask about ninja topics, and, for the time being, Kara didn't care to speak about her work. It was nice to just have a simple conversation, to remember simpler times. The unusual ninja who looked more like a plant than a person grinned when he performed a routine check on the Tamayana farm. The girl was eating dinner with an older woman and man, the parents. Sasori had asked Zetsu to conduct surveillance on a number of locations in and around Grass Country. This was the first hit. Sasori needed to know immediately. He had most urgent questions for this girl. Perhaps the other students were home on leave, too? Zetsu had a long night ahead of him. Number 1 spent less and less time around Naruto and number 3. It seemed that number 2 had been the glue that held everything together. Alternately, number 3 became more focused in his training. Naruto tried spending more time with his remaining students, time spent interacting with them directly, not through Taro or another puppet. It felt strange, unworldly to be in the room with someone who wasn't a subject for interrogation. Everything felt so wrong now. He had an emptiness in his chest. Naruto found he actually missed his student. But he didn't know what to do. So he threw himself into training. He upped his practice schedule. He spent an hour a day practicing his taijutsu while he controlled 10 puppets battling each other. He refined and improved his puppetry innovations. He got sharper, faster, better. Still, it hurt. The ghostly images of a number of people hung in the air. Sasori was alone in his safe house. He had left that pest Datara elsewhere. Leader, I have news. Enlighten us, Sasori. It will be of interest to Itachi and Kisame. The supposed grass Jonin I've been tracking for some time, is actually our missing Kyuubi container. That got the ghostly images moving and talking. Nothing had been heard of Uzumaki Naruto for some time, not even by Itachi who was formerly an Umbu captain in Hidden Leaf. Quiet, the leader commanded. Very tantalizing, Sasori. Could you provide us with some more details? Gladly. I made the acquaintance of a young woman who was one of this Jounin's students. Our arrangement together provided me with some interesting facts, although the man's location is not one of them. Stop blathering, Kisame said. Spit it out. How can this Jounin who knocked around Orochimaru be the Kyuubi container? Sasori smiled. Naruto is a puppeteer, of course. He can appear in any guise he wishes. Apparently the puppets he makes are good enough to pass as human, or he independently recreated my human puppet technique. A puppeteer, leader said. That is disturbing. It would indicate he has superb chakra control, if nothing else in ninja skills. I was under the impression, Itachi, that the boy was reviled in his village. Sasori, did this information source know who trained him? She did not. Indeed, she did not know her sensei was a teenager until a few months ago. He's Keiji, this boy of ours. It was only sheer good luck we have this much information. Had he not confronted Orochimaru, or had my spy network been less effective, we might never have known this. Enough, Itachi said. I'll pat your back all you wish the next time I see you. For now, tell me where I can find this puppeteer. What does he look like? What are his vulnerabilities? Sasori laughed. Nervous, Itachi? A few of your greatest techniques won't work against a puppet. No Tsukiyomi, Sasori, leader warned. Do not taunt. My source told me that Naruto was destroying all the safe houses she knew about. They ranged throughout the elemental countries. What of his techniques? Kisame asked. He's KG on that. The student could only talk of what the puppets could do. The main puppet is quite a weapons user. But the things she described are not enough to drive off and then severely wound someone like Orochimaru. He's obviously hidden his true power from even his students. Itachi nodded. It sounds like this one will be a challenge. Good, I like a strong ninja. I need to find a true measure of my strength. Perhaps this boy will provide it. The leader seemed less pleased. Somehow the Nine Tails has learned a powerful, hidden art. We don't know how, or precisely what he does. It's strong enough to inconvenience our old colleague. The only image we have of him is of his puppet, and that blasted thing can be abandoned at any time. What are you holding back, Sasori? This former grass Jonin has been the one harassing and devastating Orochimaru, and I doubt he'll be satisfied until Orochimaru is dead. Leader nodded. Good. This Naruto will have to pass through Rice Country with some frequency. Kisame and Itachi, you will go and greet our missing Jinchuriki. Greet him gently. Sasori, be sure your acquaintance is appropriately thanked for her assistance. Already done, my leader. Naruto was sure he was about to lose number 1. He decided to confront the issue after they finished this raid. Their efforts were less and less successful. Hidden sound was just too well hidden. But number 3 had suggested an interesting new tactic. They're called hidden sound, right? Well, why don't we see if we can find them with sound, he'd asked. This was their first test of that interesting question. Naruto had worked up an earth-style technique to send sound waves at high speed through stone and earth. Upon encountering a gap, whether a small rabbit warren or an underground building, the sound reverberated violently, causing the space to collapse. In theory, Naruto and his team should be able to see the earth bulge and then sink into the ground. It was an interesting concept, but who knew if it would work? The group stopped in 4 densely packed areas of vegetation, all places easy to conceal an underground entrance. The jutsu turned up nothing the first time and only a few small explosions the second and third times, explosions far too small to be installations. The 4th place they stopped revealed something else. A stand of vegetation erupted in a cloud of dust. Direct hit. Within seconds, Naruto, inside Taro, and his 2 remaining students moved closer to the detonation site, but they all took up different untouched sections. Each of them performed the jutsu again. After moving another time and using the jutsu again, they had a good sense of the size of the facility that they had just discovered. Number 3, why don't you see how well your steam can clean out a nest of cockroaches? My pleasure, number 4. The powerful ninja ran toward the nearest edge of the facility and began blowing out a perilously long stream of steam. It pushed straight down. Wisps of steam erupted from other damaged parts of the facility. As he turned red in the face and had sweat pouring off his face, number 3 stopped his attack. Whatever had been inside the structure was now thoroughly cooked. Number 3 looked pleased with himself, but number 1 looked confused. Naruto ended the experiment then. He needed to talk with number 1 in a safe place. He didn't care to lose another person he had come to care about. As dawn lit the sky, the team arrived in the far south of Fire Country. The bolt hole was new, one of a half-dozen recently carved out to replace the ones abandoned after number 2's departure. Number 3 went to eat a quick meal and find a dark corner to sleep in. Naruto clambered out of Taro and then tagged number 1. May I speak with you? Sure thing, number 4. Naruto gestured to a pair of chairs. He poured himself a glass of water and offered another to his student. They both drank in silence before Naruto could form the questions he wanted to ask. I wonder if you are learning what you need to from me, from this association. Number 1 shrugged. I remember that you wish to become a hunter nin. From what you've said of your family, I suppose you wish to honor their memory doing this. That earned Naruto a sharp nod. Yes. A band of thugs, led by a middling missing ninja from Hidden Cloud, killed my parents. Yes, I do this to avenge them. These raids seemed like good training at first, but now, we're hunting for a handful of needles in a haystack the size of a small country. I believe my growth has leveled off. I see. Is there anything I can do to help you? Number 1 sucked in breath and sighed. I don't know. I don't think so. Are you thinking of moving on? Number 1 nodded. You liked her, didn't you? Number 1 tried to look surprised. Who? He didn't play clueless very well. It doesn't matter, Naruto said. I promised to help you. I stand by that promise, Number 1. Thank you. I know that, but this isn't the same thing anymore. I never thought how much I liked my team. The others in my academy class just moaned and groaned about their teammates. I graduated at the bottom of the rankings and didn't have any room to bitch. I was from civilian stock, I had no reason to expect to become a ninja. But then we had something magical, the 4 of us. With Number 2, I could almost read her mind in a combat situation. Naruto smiled. Until I took you as my students, I had never thought about teamwork. But it amazed me every day what you 3, together, could achieve. Please let me know what I can do. If I need to let you go, then tell me that. I need to leave, sensei. Then you may go. Rest up as long as you need. If Number 3 remains, then we will have to set up new safe houses again. I am sorry to cause you the disruption. Naruto waved away the apology. Never apologize for trying to achieve your dreams, my student. If you think of anything I can do to help before you leave, please let me know. Number 1 wouldn't meet Naruto's eyes. He just nodded, finished off his water, and grabbed a sleeping bag. Naruto did not sleep well that night. He feared for Number 1. Hunter nins, especially those driven by a sense of vengeance, didn't usually last that long working solo. Naruto rode inside his Taro puppet, walking behind Number 3. They were getting in position to run another series of nighttime raids against Hidden Sound. They had a map and were carefully checking Hidden Sound and marking off the grids they'd touched. So far they'd uncovered and destroyed 6 more underground bunkers. The end was drawing near for Orochimaru. His ninja were decimated. His food was destroyed. His economic base was gutted. Unpaid armies don't fight after all. Now his hardened facilities were falling one by one. The Snake Sunin would have to return to the field to confront Naruto, and this time, the Snake Sunin wouldn't be leaving alive. Number 3 was moving at a good clip, until he suddenly stopped. He then leapt off into the vegetation. He screamed. Naruto looked, there was something over there. Something rather close to a former bolt hole Naruto had used. It looked like a stunted tree or something. Taro closed the distance, but Naruto almost lost control of his puppet when he understood what he was looking at. This cannot go unpunished, Number 4. Number 3's anger had already morphed into resolve. Naruto looked at the horrible thing. It wasn't a stunted tree at all. It was a pole planted in the ground. A bleached skull, mounted on top. There was a horrible red scorpion carved or burnt into the forehead. Even though the face was gone, eaten by birds or insects, Naruto knew it had to be Number 2. The clothing at the base of the pole matched what his student liked to wear. In that moment of realization, Number 2 was dead. Naruto's fear of Akatsuki no Sasori disappeared. The scorpion was dead. He just didn't know it yet. Chapter 19. Naruto's mind was constantly on Sasori, but he couldn't leave a project unfinished. Orochimaru's main bases were in ruins, and the Snake Sunin was fighting a desperate war of attrition. Sasori needed to die, but Naruto wouldn't leave Orochimaru alive. Best to take care of one problem before moving on to another. The real problem was that Naruto didn't know how to kill Sasori. There were rumors that the ninja wasn't quite human any longer. He also didn't know where to find the Suna Puppeteer. It would not be an easy task all around. The Taro puppet in Number 3 had personally examined most of Rice Country, and the number of remaining possibilities for Orochimaru's remaining bunkers was quite small. The man would not want to give up his base of operations without a fight, and he was arrogant enough to believe that no one could defeat him on his home turf. It took only 3 more raids before the 2 ninja got an irate Orochimaru to attack them. 7 massive snakes popped out of nowhere. On top of the largest one, Orochimaru and a guard stood and began lobbing devastating techniques down against Taro and number 3. "You will die this evening, you horrible thugs," Orochimaru screamed. "I don't know how or why you've survived as long as you have, but no one can escape me forever." The snapping mouths of the snakes were everywhere it seemed. Their bodies twisted and contracted over the whole field of battle. Minutes passed. The enemies hadn't been retaliating. Indeed, one enemy looked to be crushed inside of Manda's massive coils. The other shinobi was gone, crushed perhaps under a summon. It felt like a hollow victory to Orochimaru. These two had harassed and destroyed so much of his force and his infrastructure. To have a simple conclusion just felt wrong. Orochimaru turned to look as 3 of the massive summons simultaneously screamed out in terror and then were forced back to the summon realm. A second later, Manda himself squealed in pain and anger before he turned into a mere cloud of smoke. Orochimaru twisted and pivoted his body so he landed in a tree. Seikon landed badly, and was hurt. "Show yourselves, you low-born beasts," the snake Sunin bellowed. He was normally calm, but nothing had ever destroyed his boss summon without Orochimaru having at least an inkling of what was happening. He gathered his breath in time to see the remaining summons banished back to their native realm. What kind of technique could be used remotely to banish summons? Orochimaru, master of 3000 jutsu, did not have the first clue. Indeed, the theory of summoning suggested that there were only 3 ways to banish a summon: for the summon itself to will it, for the summoner to will it, or for the summon to use up its gifted chakra through vigorous combat or monstrous wounds. Orochimaru hadn't sent them back. Manda certainly hadn't willed himself back. So, there was something about the chakra, or else the summoning theory wasn't quite right. Orochimaru watched as Seikon was attacked. The taller ninja didn't use any kind of chakra. Indeed, Orochimaru couldn't feel the ninja's presence or get an accurate gauge of how powerful he might be. One of the punches somehow drew blood. That was when Seikon began to scream. His skin seemed to balloon up and then melt off him. The heat necessary to accomplish this had instantly destroyed the ninja's capacity to scream. The ninja used poisoned blades or some other unusual technique. The snake Sunin began to feel a bit nervous. He couldn't even detect where his opponents were. Nor did he know of any poison or other type of technique that had the same effects as what killed Seikon. "If it's to be to the death, let us fight like ninja." A whisper in Orochimaru's ear came before he could react. "Acceptable." Then the snake Sunin knew no more. A kunai severed the ninja's spinal column. 2 battered ninja just stood over the pair of rapidly cooling corpses. They said nothing and did nothing. For this raid, Naruto had gone back to old model puppets, one designed to look like Taro and another to resemble number 3. Orochimaru had fallen to a puppet and he hadn't even known it. Since neither puppet had a chakra network, Orochimaru couldn't sense them. They were made entirely from wood, and the only chakra they had access to were tiny filaments, the chakra strings Naruto used to control them. It was hardly sporting, but the snake Sunin had worn the skin of other ninjas he'd killed in order to infiltrate and attack the hidden leaf. Taro and number 3 played by Orochimaru's rules, brutal and vicious, without mercy. Number 3 and the real Taro took almost 15 minutes to arrive on the scene. They left their hiding spot a few miles away only after Orochimaru was already dead. It wasn't terribly sporting, but they'd hung back in one of the safe areas they'd already investigated and cleared. Orochimaru couldn't get in a lucky killing blow if he wasn't fighting real ninja. Once he arrived, number 3 used one of his steam techniques to obliterate the snake Sunin's body. Taro used fire to destroy the dead bodyguard. "It seems too easy," number 3 said. No. It was not easy to drive Orochimaru into a blind rage, nor to make him so overconfident, nor to develop the chakra poison we loaded into the puppets to dispel the summons. We have been planning this since that unfortunate day when we discovered what happened to number 2. Is it time to move on? Taro nodded. The old business is concluded. We may now proceed to new business. It's going to be harder, isn't it? Taro looked at the ashes from Orochimaru's body. Any technique I could imagine is likely something that Sasori could reproduce. When we attack him, we have one chance. If we launch the attack and fail, but escape, we shall have to shelve every attack he witnessed from us, and design counters to them. I believe Sasori to be a learning enemy, unlike the Snake Sunin who thought too highly of his own skills. He was world-renowned for his chakra sensing capabilities, Number 3 said, with a smile. As I told you before, Number 3, any advantage can eventually be turned against you. I hope never to be as arrogant as our fallen opponents. Should I ever succumb, feel free to slap me around. That got Number 3 laughing. At the mental image and supreme difficulty of knocking around one of Naruto's true capacity. Should we tell anyone what we've done? Number 3 asked. It wasn't every day a pair of basically unranked and village-less ninja killed a famous S-ranked ninja. Perhaps. I think we should, Number 3 pushed. If we do, we'll attribute it to Taro, just in time for the Taro personality to meet a fitting, public end. Neither of us can continue to grow if we have half the elemental nations monitoring us. It's bad enough that Sasori got interested, but we will end that as soon as we can. Taro made the hand signs for an earth-style technique. All the ash in front of Naruto was sucked down into the earth, a dozen meters down. Orochimaru's head would have brought in truly staggering sums, but Naruto didn't want any part of Orochimaru's body hanging around. Ninja bodies were dangerous things. Who knew what a skilled medic nin could do with a bit of Orochimaru's brain or blood? Naruto didn't want to find out. Naruto sat in his bunker in T-Country and pored over thousands of records. He had files on every civilian who had ever entered a grass country village. Most were merchants of some sort. Naruto was looking for something vital. This knowledge was precious. Indeed, the cost for all of this wealth of information, for this wealth of potential covers for espionage missions or infiltration assignments, had been the famed grass cutter sword that Naruto had ripped from Orochimaru when they'd fought in Konoha. The Grass Jonin Council had offered Ryo, gemstones, jutsu scrolls, but the only remotely interesting thing they possessed were moldy old documents on civilians. Naruto took the only copies of them, thousands and thousands of records and photographs. For what Naruto envisioned, this information, detailed and imperfect and true, was worth more than gold. He needed new identities. The ones he'd set up for his puppets operated by Kage-bunshin throughout the elemental countries were thin cover. Any of them coming under scrutiny wouldn't pass muster. With these files, Naruto could fine-tune his many identities. He could give the manager of that tea-drying warehouse a detailed background, imperfect and messy and guaranteed to be above reproach. Why bother? It was a lot of time and effort to spend. He needed spies. Lots more spies. If he was going to find Akasuna no Sasori, he needed an army of spies. Sasori had sought Naruto out, he'd found Number 2. Now Naruto needed to return the favor. Sasori's spies were excellent and deeply placed throughout the elemental nations. He'd tracked down Naruto, and then later Number 2, without difficulty. Matching that level of accomplishment would likely take some time. So, more spies. Puppet spies in every walk of life, whores, vagrants, business owners, ramen shop attendants. Full identities, bits scraped from this file, other nuggets gleaned from a different file. He definitely needed a strong presence in Suna, Sasori's home territory. It was also the home of the one-tailed Jinchuriki. Yes, Naruto realized. That was the way. These Akatsuki, according to Kabuto, were tracking the tailed beasts. Naruto could set up his spies close to their usual locations. The two tails stayed 40 kilometers outside of Hidden Cloud in a special military base. Naruto could set up a puppet as a military contractor, someone who dug ditches or cooked food or something. Things that ninja wouldn't do themselves. The others. Naruto began sketching out what he knew of the other beasts. It wasn't much, as Kabuto had known little when he'd been captured. Naruto worked long into the night sketching out plans. He finally had an inkling of how to trace back Sasori. He'd put out a general spy network, but he'd spend the greatest amount of his time tracking the tailed beasts. Sasori wouldn't be able to stay away from one or more of them forever. Perhaps Jiraiya would know more about the tailed beasts. Interesting. Naruto yawned, stretched, and went to see the man named as his godfather. Number 3 and the Taro puppet had been on the road, non-stop, for the last 6 days. At present, they were cutting through Rice Country on their way to a base in Lightning Country. Naruto had to use Taro's abilities to set up his new spy ring. Sasori, a true spy master, was able to mask his movements at will. It would take a large spy network, and a lot of luck, to discover the location of the insane puppeteer. Number 3 went along to relieve his anger at Sasori and his boredom. More than a few bandits met their end in the last week. He liked being outside far more than sitting inside. He wondered, from time to time, if he had done the right thing staying with his sensei. He continued to learn and improve, of course, but Naruto wasn't much of a people person. He was brilliant, however, and had helped refine number 3 into a deadly ninja. He didn't know a lot of jutsu, no, he knew how to construct jutsu from scratch, a self-taught skill that was worth its weight in gold. For now, number 3 resolved to stay. He was still learning, still improving. If that ever changed, then he would need to find a new sensei or go out totally on his own. Number 3 was inside his head more than a ninja should be. He almost didn't stop when he felt Taro grab at his arm. "Pay attention," Taro whispered. Number 3 blinked a few times and then saw he was about to step in something unusual. There was something wet and dark on the path a few steps ahead. It didn't really look like dirt or grass. It looked most like tar. How could he have missed that? Stupid. A trap. Taro nodded. A type I've never seen before. Number 3 stepped backward while the Taro puppet didn't move at all. Both ninja were attempting to get a fix on the person who'd laid the trap. It looked something like a small version of one of Jiraiya's earth techniques, the underworld swamp. Even safe inside a bunker, Naruto didn't want to find out what kind of damage this little trap would inflict. "Fuckers are smarter than I'd have thought," a rough voice boomed from off to the left of the path. Naruto, using Taro's chakra network, tried to find the source of the voice, but couldn't. This was a high-level ninja, then, someone who could hide his presence from another skilled ninja. "Don't be so crass, Kisame. Let's get this done," another voice said, this one a bit bored. Number 3 looked up and around in surprise. He recognized the name Kisame. This wasn't going to be good. He remembered what it was like being near to Orochimaru, and then to Sasori. Kisame, according to the bingo book, was just as fearsome an enemy, a master swordsman who wasn't afraid of ninjutsu, the man who'd killed a daimyo and 100 or more of that man's samurai guardians. A pair of ninja dressed in black robes with red clouds stepped from behind a thatch of trees and brush. Naruto was very concerned now. They'd been close, but they'd masked their chakra somehow. It was a technique that Naruto had not come across before. Taro took up the conversation. Number 3 and he had almost walked into a trap. They needed to regain an advantage, if possible. "Akatsuki again," Taro said in a bored voice. "An Uchiha, likely, and then a ninja from Water Country. You honor me with your presence." Taro gave a mocking bow. Naruto knew it was almost always better to fight an angry enemy. "Sasori didn't tell us you had a personality, little ninja." "Good to know. Useful for a tombstone," the blue-skinned ninja said. The Uchiha, Itachi, if Jiraiya's explanations were accurate, looked annoyed, but didn't comment on his partner's words. "Uzumaki Naruto, you will come with us. You have something that we require." Taro and number 3 both laughed at that. It seemed that even the great Sasori hadn't sussed out that Taro was a puppet, or, if he hadn't shared it with his Akatsuki colleagues. Number 3 was still nervous, but Taro was the most powerful ninja, human or puppet, number 3 had ever heard of. He tried not to show his nerves. "I see nothing at all amusing," Itachi said. "Come with me now, Naruto, or perhaps I will allow my partner to practice some of his depravities upon you." "None of that sick shit, Itachi. I just said that I didn't think the kid needed his legs, not with what we need from him." Taro smiled broadly. "Stupid ninjas always have to talk, always have to threaten and chatter and waste time. Good for me, not so good for them." The only thing staying his hand was Itachi. Naruto, back at the home base, wasn't sure what to do with the ex-Konoha ninja. The Uchiha wasn't quite the monster popular lore made him out to be, not with a signed order absolving him of the blame for the Uchiha massacre. All this time jabbering had given Naruto more than ample time to prepare the flowing red death. Naruto had never tested it against S-ranked opponents, but it would be an interesting opening gesture. He was trying to choreograph what might come next if he needed more than the opening dance. Uchiha, I will have to politely decline your offer. I rather prize my body and have no interest in whatever you want with my tenant. Kisame looked pleased and lifted his sword into a position to use it. I was hoping you'd say that, little ninja. I am sorry, Itachi. Say goodbye to your partner. A millisecond later a dozen red puppets sprung up from rocks inscribed with special seals. Kisame, to his credit, managed to evade 3 of his attackers in that instant. But 9 of them struck home. Kisame's shredded body landed on the ground a moment after the red-tinted puppets vanished into thin air. The puppets hadn't left Itachi untouched, either, but their purpose hadn't been to kill him. No, they'd cut his Achilles tendons, the tendons in his wrists, and stabbed Itachi's Sharingan eyes. The last known Uchiha was alive, but would be unable to ever take up ninja duties again. He wouldn't be able to run or make hand signs. And his special eye techniques were gone. Come, Itachi. I have much to ask you about. Number 3, please collect the sword and the head. Burn the rest of that traitor's body. Right away, number 3 said, more than a bit numb. He didn't know what had happened, other than a blur of red. It had moved faster than number 3 could even see. He immediately rethought his sensei. If a person his same age could do this, then number 3 should be able to do something unstoppable, too. He needed to work harder. I don't need to suggest that you never mention what you saw today, number 3. That technique is one of my most lethal, and it will continue to be effective so long as it's secret. This is only the second time I've ever used it in combat. Its success relies upon its remaining a secret. Number 3 just nodded. One of my most lethal. Naruto was keeping secrets, it seemed. It was good that number 3 hadn't parted ways yet. If you have a storage scroll, would you mind sealing away the head and sword? It may be some time before we need them. Right, number 3 said. Taro lifted a stoic and silent Itachi from the ground. I think our good friend Itachi will have much of interest to tell us, especially regarding Sasori. The 3 continued through Rice Country. Itachi didn't speak for a week, and only then after Naruto personally broke him of his silence. Number 3 didn't envy the Uchiha that day. Naruto was brutal in extracting information. The information, while interesting, just reinforced how cagey Sasori really was. No one, least of all Itachi, knew where Sasori spent his time when he wasn't on a mission. Naruto would need to find his prey the old-fashioned way, through perseverance and dumb luck. Chapter 20. A shadow clone, hung to look like a nondescript personage, walked slowly and deliberately up a narrow dirt path into the mountains outside Hidden Cloud. There was a base there, most likely abandoned, that the Akatsuki had used in ages past. The shadow clone had been created for one purpose, to deliver a warning and a promise. The clone carried 2 bags. One held the pieces of a famed ninja sword. The other, the head of a notorious murderer. Today Naruto had sent his clone to make a statement. A fuck you unmistakable to anyone who witnessed the gruesome scene Naruto had concocted. The hardest part had been getting this location. Then breaking Samehda into pieces, liquid nitrogen and a sledgehammer had just been enough. This final act was nothing in comparison. In less than an hour, Naruto's clone had pounded the 3 largest chunks of Samehda into the stone near to the safe house. It formed a little niche, one just large enough to house the head of its former master. It was a macabre shrine. By the time some Akatsuki stumbled upon it, the blue skin would be gone, rotted, or eaten. But the pieces of Samehda were unmistakable. They would know that Uzumaki Naruto had declared war on them and on anyone they sent after him. The message was specifically for Sasori, a calling out. It was almost samurai-like in its brazen stupidity. But it seemed like the right first step. The Naruto clone stepped back and looked at the scene. It was correct. He dispersed himself and hoped the real Naruto would be pleased. It didn't make up for the death of number 2, but it was a step in the right direction. A blinded Uchiha Itachi heard stone moving against stone. It was his tormentor, the nine-tailed Jinchuriki, returning for some more brutalization. He hadn't fully bought into the scheme engineered by his sensei, Uchiha Madara, to capture all 9 of the Biju, but he wished he could have killed this bastard of a ninja. Itachi felt revulsion about the other Uchiha he'd killed, but he possessed no small amount of pride in his own accomplishments. He was a powerful ninja, a traitor to the clan but for a good purpose, the greatest genius they'd ever produce. To be so thoroughly unprepared, to think that a mere boy could do nothing against one such as he, foolish. Pride goeth before a fall, the third Hokage had once said about the Uchiha. So true. He and Kisame had laid an ambush, so they'd never expected one in return. Itachi didn't even have his Sharingan active. He had no idea what those red blurs were even now. The Jinchuriki certainly wasn't telling. Still angry, Itachi. Naruto's calm voice mocked even now. Itachi said nothing. Fine, if it will help you to answer my questions, I will tell you that I expected no easy victory against you two if my initial attack failed. All swordsmen need a moment or 3 to get momentum. All ninjutsu users need time to make their hand seals. My chosen arts are both faster and slower than yours. I defeated you with seals of my own design, seals it took me 22 seconds to prepare. Had you attacked immediately, you would have maintained surprise, you would have had the advantage. Your need to ask me to surrender was pointless, and it cost you your eyes. Yes, Itachi now realized all that. There are ninjas stronger than you, Jinchuriki. Of that, I have no doubt. I am personally preparing to kill Akasuna no Sasori. I expect him to be the greatest challenge I've faced. Itachi frowned. He's nothing compared to. Here the Uchiha managed to stop himself. This bastard was fishing for information Itachi almost volunteered. Compared to whom, Itachi could. I will say nothing further. You will. I have no doubt about it. But now, I need to prepare your body. I think it's highly unlikely you'll ever escape from here, but if you do you could have a medic nin attempt to repair the destroyed tendons in your arms and ankles. The seals I am going to inscribe on your body will ensure, well, my safety from you. Itachi struggled. He resisted. In his weakened form, it was useless. Half an hour later he could feel his chakra feeding the seals, rather than remaining available for use in ninjutsu. Insidious, Jinchuriki. I can feel your seals robbing me of my chakra. A prison for your body that you will never be free of. Then you have no leverage to get me to speak, Itachi calmly reasoned. If you can't tempt me with my freedom, then you have nothing. Your seals prove I will never be free. You no longer have a functional body, that is true. And I will never release you. But a prideful creature like yourself would betray everyone and everything in order to remain alive. You will talk, Itachi, or you will not receive food. I shall return in 3 or 4 days to see if you've changed your mind. I think the hunger will bend your opinion my way. Even after feeling torture at Naruto's hand, Itachi was still surprised by how ruthless this boy really was. He would have to think on this threat and assess whether the Jinchuriki really meant it. If it were a bluff, then Itachi would want to kill himself for falling for it. If it were true, if Naruto could actually let another person starve to death, that was something different. Yes, this required thought. Stone groaned against stone. Naruto was gone again. Itachi was left with only his thoughts. 3 days later, Itachi knew that the Jinchuriki's threat was real. His life had been saved, unlike Kisame's, in order to extract information. If he refused to provide it, Naruto would kill him. A simple fact. As the stone stopped moving against stone, Itachi made his decision. He would answer the ninja's questions. He had broken and slipped during torture and gave what little he knew of Sasori's movements and hiding spots, but Itachi expected this calmer Jinchuriki would be even more uncaring. Neglect, fashioned correctly, could be more devastating than physical torture. From your body posture it seems you've steeled yourself to collaboration with your captor. I think it the better choice. Ask you questions, Jinchuriki. I will. Let me be clear, Itachi, about the seals on your body. They do steal nearly every drop of available chakra, but it is for a purpose. Your body is covered in special exploding seals, more than 500 of them continually fed off your power. If I ever prove you've lied to me, I will show you how well they work. Do we have an understanding? I have no choice. You do. Speak truth or die. Again, do you understand? Yes. That is fine. My first question: the records I stole from Konoha ordering the Uchiha massacre differ from what happened according to the popular accounts. Tell me the true story. Uchiha Madara had made plans decades ago. Madara? That name sounds familiar. He was a contemporary of the first and second Hokages. Another one of the immortality-seeking ninja, huh? Why do the powerful ones go that way? He founded the Akatsuki, even if he hides in the shadows. He personally recruited our putative leader, Pain. Naruto sighed. So, compare this Madara to Sasori or Orochimaru. Itachi had never seen Madara fight, but he had heard stories. Madara beat Pain. Pain could beat Sasori and Orochimaru at the same time. Damn. Continue with the story about the massacre. Naruto stayed long into the night. Sasori was picked over again. Everything Itachi had seen Sasori do, or hints as to how he thought. Then this was repeated for Pain, Madara, and everyone else Itachi knew in the Akatsuki. Especially troubling were the powers Itachi knew Madara possessed. If Sasori wasn't enough, now there was Madara and Pain, too. Deidara used explosives. Konan could manipulate paper, even turning herself into paper. Zetsu made Naruto's skin crawl, a cannibal and a spy almost without restriction, the previous S-ranked ninja that Grass Country had tossed out for being too powerful. It was the freak show made powerful. Then Pain and his Rinnegan eyes. That would need studying. Naruto brought Itachi food and watched the former ninja eat with difficulty. He took the tray of food away when he left. Naruto came to one painful conclusion: if he tried to go up against Sasori now, Naruto would likely die. The unwise sending of Kisame's head to a former Akatsuki safe house would have these ninja on edge. He had tipped his hat without revealing the full strength he wielded, and they would be prepared. Stupid. Stupid. Pride comes before the fall. Naruto couldn't keep from bragging, couldn't help but return Sasori's gruesome calling card. Now it would just prepare ninjas who were stronger and better trained. It was time to take the heat off. It was time to retire for a while. It was time to finally begin preparing. The seals and puppet techniques and poisons Naruto had amassed wouldn't do much against someone like Madara. He had to invent specific Madara killers and painkillers. It would take years. Jiraiya tumbled out of a storage scroll and blinked a few times before he realized he was outside. It had been a long time, months, since he'd been captured by that grass ninja. He got to his feet as gracefully as he could and looked around. What's the deal? A ninja, that damned grass ninja who'd stopped wearing his forehead protector, stepped forward, smiling. The deal is simple. I have decided to test you to see if you are worth the bother of continuing to feed you, oh awesome toad sage. What? Jiraiya felt like he'd been asleep for a week, now this crazy talk. A duel to the death. The grass ninja's voice sounded mocking and cruelly playful. It's your funeral. Orochimaru said something similar before I killed him. Taro leapt forward and began to rain down blow after blow. The assertion that Orochimaru was finally dead threw Jiraiya completely off his game, leaving aside the fact that he had been imprisoned for months and hadn't trained in that time. He reacted slowly and felt like he was being battered around by a bevy of women at the hot springs after Jiraiya had been caught peeping. He pushed himself away from that insane grass ninja and began forming hand seals. Jiraiya needed to collect himself. Toad summoning technique. In seconds he was atop Gamabunta, and the boss toad was complaining about being summoned. Bunta, stop. That little squirt down there claims he killed Orochimaru. I have no reason to doubt him. Bullshit, the massive toad shouted. That snake Manda would have been pissing it about so loudly I would have heard of it. He takes some small pride in how evil his summoner is. I will inquire when this pest is gone. The eels are friends to both the toads and the snakes. Jiraiya just grunted and cut his summon off. Give me some oil, Bunta. A primitive flamethrower came into being and the ground 30 meters in front of the boss toad were scorched. Such a powerful weapon was hard to aim and retarget, so it wasn't too surprising Taro evaded the attack. If you're done gossiping, Jiraiya, I came to fight you, not an ancient creature who has much more sense than you do, Taro said. Then he jumped forward and jabbed a long thin knife into the summon. The boss toad shrieked and dispersed into a huge cloud of smoke. Jiraiya fell and landed awkwardly, but he was still fully mobile. How did you do that? Jiraiya asked. There are more things than are dreamt of in your philosophy, old man. This is not a lesson, it's a duel. Show me what you can do. Prove to me I was right to spare your life. Fear coursed through Jiraiya's body. You might have kidnapped me, but there is no way you could kill me. Taro leapt forward and landed 2 swift kicks to Jiraiya's backside. The grass ninja moved faster than Jiraiya could clearly see. It was worrying. Jiraiya took a few seconds to make his decision. He hadn't perfected the Sage Mode technique yet, so he had to get this out of a taijutsu spar. The embarrassing kicks to Jiraiya's ass told the old ninja that his young opponent could have already killed him, had he been serious. He was still playing for some reason. To get this on a better footing, Jiraiya needed an awesome technique. Or a pair of them. One hand slammed to the earth as he shouted out, "Swamp of the underworld." The massive earth technique began to suck everything under. In his other hand, before he managed to stand up, he Fashianed a Rasengan. The little grass ninja would be getting the full treatment. Jiraiya jumped from where he was to a tree on the edge of his chakra-created swamp. He clung to the trunk with one foot in a hand. He finally located Taro and jumped from spot to spot on his swamp. He had studied the technique for years and knew how to survive momentary brushes with it. The grass ninja hadn't seen it before and was trying to pull himself out of it. Serves the cocky bastard right. Taro pulled himself out of the muck at about the same moment Jiraiya arrived with the Rasengan in hand. A thrust and a dodge. Again and again, Taro wasn't where Jiraiya thought he'd be. How could he move like that? For a big, tall guy, he moved like the wind. It was almost like he didn't have a proper spine. What a monster of an opponent. Perhaps, in a moment of seriousness, this asshole from grass really had killed Orochimaru. Hold still, damn it. I don't think so, Taro said, dodging again. You want to put that ball of chakra through my body. Jiraiya growled and lunged again. Nothing but air. How is this a duel if you won't attack? I am letting the grey old man wear himself out before I bother. I figure you've got another 5 or 10 minutes of stamina left, then we'll see. Shit. Jiraiya hadn't been thinking about that. Taro then pulled out a kunai and began attacking for real. Jiraiya would try to land the Rasengan, and would miss. Taro would pull away at the last second and manage to draw a faint line of blood from Jiraiya's arm or shoulder. Jiraiya almost dispelled the Rasengan and attempted a Raisin Shuriken, one of the unfinished techniques of his most promising student, one likely not to work completely as intended. Instead, he launched himself for another attack. He hand thrust forward, to catch nothing. Instead, Jiraiya began to howl in pain. Taro's kunai was now embedded in the older ninja's pelvis with a crushing amount of force. I'd heard that an old pervert like you used your brain too little and your groin too much. I see I failed to end your career as a peeping Tom, but perhaps you'll think better of it next time. I am going to crush you, you little fuck, Jiraiya gasped, in more pain than he'd ever been in. Not even a beat down from Tsunade left him this angry, enraged, and impotent. There was something very odd, very dangerous about this grass ninja. If Jiraiya didn't figure out his weaknesses soon, the Toad Sage would be dead. Perhaps taijutsu was his strong suit. Did Jiraiya need to find an elemental weakness? The Toad Sage had, through many years of pain and training, become proficient in the main 5 elements. Would this younger ninja be invulnerable to all of them? Jiraiya smelled salt water nearby. He decided to try a combination water and lightning attack to stun the grass ninja. Electric lashing mist. When he exhaled, a salty pressurized mist shot at Taro, crackling with electrical energy. It wasn't a wide area attack like the swamp, but it was effective. Jiraiya had learned it off an asshole ninja from Hidden Cloud who'd attacked him years ago. Jiraiya remembered the technique and buried that asshole in an unmarked grave. The surprise attack hit the grass ninja in the shoulder. Blood and bone and flesh dissolved instantly. The ninja's left arm became useless. But it didn't stun him. The young ninja resisted the crackling electricity. It should be enough to stop a heart for a few moments. Instead of anger, Jiraiya earned laughter from his target. Finally something new, old man. A good attack. I'm more of a hand-to-hand combat specialist, but I know a few interesting techniques. Let's see how you feel about this one in return. Taro knelt and slammed his good right hand and his mostly useless left one on the ground. Exploding mountain perfusion. In all directions, save for a small ring of safety for Taro, jagged pillars erupted from the ground in all directions. More than one slammed in Jiraiya. Taro smiled, lifted his hand off the ground, and the pillars fell away. It was a terribly draining technique. It became a slugfest again. Neither ninja had enough chakra to continue throwing out high-level techniques like that. But Jiraiya's attack had succeeded in making Taro slower and less lethal. A one-armed ninja was disadvantaged against a ninja who was tired but had both arms. Jiraiya realized he was winning because Taro was losing blood faster than Jiraiya was. Jiraiya landed a good punch into the grass ninja's good shoulder and that sent the man down. Jiraiya slammed his hands onto the ground again. Swamp of the underworld. This time Taro did not evade the attack. He seemed almost out of it, unable to respond. The devastating earth technique took hold of Taro and drug him deep underground. Jiraiya released the technique then, leaving his opponent, and one-time captor, dead under meters and meters of earth and stone. Jiraiya collapsed on the ground. Why had that crazy ninja held back for so long? He'd played with Jiraiya for most of the battle and only gotten serious in the last few minutes. That bastard could have crushed Jiraiya, and it was only 2 lucky blows that saved Jiraiya from death. He tried to calm himself and slow his breathing. He was terribly out of shape right now. Damn. So close to death. Sarutobi-sensei should thump him a good one for doing so poorly. That grass ninja was bad news. Jiraiya got to his feet and began walking. The pain from his hip reminded him he had a kunai lodged in the bone. He knew some medic techniques, but he wasn't sure whether it was better to leave the kunai in or to take it out and try to staunch the blood flow. Damn. He didn't even have enough chakra left to summon a medium-sized toad. He took a step and then almost screamed. He lowered himself to the ground. He'd recover for a bit, summon a toad. He'd find a road. The road would lead him to a village. Then he could get directions back to Fire Country. He needed to inform the Hokage of these happenings. He also needed to summon Gamabunta in a day or 3 to see if Orochimaru was truly dead. He was hurt, terribly, but he would survive. He would heal and get strong again. He wouldn't let something like this happen again. Not ever. Naruto was said to say goodbye to his Taro identity. He'd created and even lived inside many of the 15 different versions of the Taro puppet he'd created over the years. The last one, created specifically to battle Jiraiya, used real blood and bone and tissue that a few bandits had unwillingly donated to the cause. Working with dead bodies that way made Naruto feel sick, even weeks after the fact. He would not be attempting such a thing again, not if he could avoid it. He finished eating breakfast in his small hovel in Earth Country. He was going to spend a few weeks personally establishing his new identity before he turned it over to a shadow clone. Number 3 was walking up the path from his cottage a kilometer away. He had insisted on joining Naruto in his training exercise. Even if it lasts years. Naruto had asked. Even so. Number 3 walked to the door which Naruto then opened. Morning, Naruto's student said. Ready to plant some trees? Yes. Let's get going. Have you given some thought to a disguise? At least a name? I can't, for safety's sake, continue to call you Number 3. I gave my true name up when I left grass with you, sensei. I am now Number 3, in my mind and my heart. But for the purpose of a disguise, I would be called Yamayaki. It means, burning the hills. Isn't that a touch dramatic? No, I think it's just right. Naruto, with gray hair and a good deal of a tanning solution making him dark brown, just nodded. If number 3 wished such an obvious name, they could make it work. Many people from the larger villages renamed themselves if they were fleeing the law. Earth Country's farming population was filled with people who were fleeing dark pasts elsewhere. That's why it was a perfect place to hide for a period of time. In a few weeks, they'd carve out a new underground bunker to use as a training facility. Then they could resume training. To kill Sasori. To deal with Pain and Madara. To realize Naruto's dream of being the strongest ninja ever, even without a whole body. As Naruto and his student settled into work, Naruto wondered if that was an adequate goal any longer. Strength and revenge was a young man's work. Eventually he'd age, he'd need a new goal. Assuming he survived Sasori, Pain, and Madara. A big assumption. Chapter 21. A half-dead Jiraiya arrived in Konoha 3 days after his duel with Taro. His toad carriers were most displeased that the toad sage had refused medical attention in any one of the small villages they'd passed by. Paranoia could be a bad thing. It had almost killed Jiraiya. The lead toad carrying his summoner took the old ninja directly to the hospital, even though Jiraiya insisted on seeing the Hokage. The Umbu obviously informed the Hokage about Jiraiya's unusual reappearance, wounded and raving and carried in by a bunch of massive toads. As the Hokage walked into the hospital, he heard a recapitulation of the raving. Apparently Jiraiya had killed a man who had killed Orochimaru. And he'd been the dead man's captive. And the grass ninja was one scary motherfucker. The comments about a grass ninja caught Sarutobi's interest. Naruto had assumed an identity there as Taro. Sarutobi arrived at the top floor, in the secure wing. Jiraiya had a lot of enemies, many of them husbands or former husbands of women Jiraiya had entertained, and Sarutobi didn't want his spymaster killed while asleep in a drug-induced stupor. The Hokage watched the medic nin repairing Jiraiya's injuries. He overheard that it would take some time for the ninja's bones to heal, but they had begun knitting together muscle and flesh already. The Hokage walked into the room. Jiraiya, even under the haze of pain medications, tried to talk. "Stop, my student. I heard bits and pieces of your ravings. I will try to see what makes sense. You claim Orochimaru is dead." The toads confirmed it. Manda is despondent. Jiraiya sounded smarter when he was on morphine, it seemed, even if he was slurring his words. The Hokage was quiet for a long while. "I suppose you shouted this to everyone you met?" "Pretty much." The Hokage frowned. What good was a spymaster if he couldn't keep a secret? Orochimaru's unexpected death opened up some complications, some positive, some less so. The biggest problem was that Orochimaru had attacked Hidden Leaf, failed, and then been killed by someone other than a Hidden Leaf ninja. It made the village look weak and foolish, if the story got out. Which Jiraiya had apparently done. Who claims to have killed him? Bastard grass ninja who kidnapped me? Sarutobi's eyes went wide. This could very well be Naruto, the same boy who likely destroyed the grocer who'd contributed to the loss of his leg. The Hokage nodded at the medical attendants and they quickly left the room. Jiraiya was stable enough for confidential talk. His name? Takeo. Tado. Taro? Taro of the river. Jiraiya nodded a bit. That's it. You say you killed this man, the one who claimed to have killed Orochimaru. Fucker broke my pelvis. He was going for my cannon and the gunner's mates with a bloody kunai. The Hokage rolled his eyes. Such lines were amusing in a filthy novel, but not in a serious conversation. Are you sure he's dead? Really dead? I am going to need a highly accurate description of the battle, Jiraiya. Why? I believe it is possible that this Taro killed Orochimaru. I do not believe, however, that you killed him. I fucking did, the Toad Sunin shouted. Apparently morphine made him more profane than usual. Did he bleed? Did you see him bleed? I blasted his shoulder good. Lots of blood. That had Sarutobi stumped. Puppets, as he assumed Naruto to be using, didn't bleed. Let me tell you a story, my student. Listen carefully, then we will compare notes. When Orochimaru sequestered me during the battle a few months back, I began losing badly. Then I vanished. I still don't know how. When I was conscious again, I was sitting inside the Hokage monument talking to this Taro of the river. He had some harsh words for me, but he also called me old man. Only one other person has dared call me that, Naruto. I believe this Taro is Naruto's alter ego, or is perhaps a puppet of Naruto's design. No, Jiraiya said. Not my godson. The bastard's first questions were about Naruto. I don't understand. Sleep, Jiraiya. We will speak again later. I have much to consider about your story. I also need to see if I can tamp down the rumors you've started. Good luck with that. I know. A farmer with a cart hooked up to a stubborn mule walked slowly through Earth Country on his way to River Country. He was nearly at the Earth/Grass border. He'd already sent his colleague, Burning the Hills, ahead to find a couple of likely places to get situated. Of all the places Naruto had ever lived, he liked River Country the best. Given the chance, he opted to return there over spending time in the resorts of Fire Country or the beauty of Tea Country or any other place he'd known. There was just something liberating about the place. Naruto had left a fully articulated puppet in his stead back at the farm. There were a team of shadow clones to run that puppet, and enough to spare in case urgent information was discovered. One could just pop and Naruto would have the information immediately. The last 6 months had woken Naruto to the fact that he needed to delegate. He tried to keep direct control over as many puppets as possible. He tried to do it all, but it wasn't working. Now he'd arrived at using shadow clones to monitor his spying puppets. He had infiltrators, with deep backgrounds, in 8 villages in Lightning Country. He placed several in Wind Country, including one right in Hidden Sand. He was gathering information on the other Jinchuriki. Not every country was as cavalier with their secret weapons as Hidden Leaf, Cloud, and Sand. Some ninjas actually knew how to practice secrecy and deception. Naruto walked to the side of his mule, but suddenly tugged on its halter to stop. There were some odd chakra flowing around in the woods to the south. A ninja battle. Naruto was perfectly capable of holding his own in any battle, hell, against even a Sunin he could paralyze a person and take over their body as an unwilling puppet. It wasn't quite mind control, there were some ninja who could do that, but it would be very devastating for a bunch of bandits or low-level ninja to suddenly have to fight against their own. He led the mule and his cart off the road to a shady area. He tied the mule to a tree and went to investigate. A lone ninja, masked, battled against 3 others. It appeared that another 3 were already dead or immobilized. Naruto stood close to a tree and masked his chakra as best he could. That skill was his greatest breakthrough in the last 6 months. He'd made progress on other fronts, but he'd done the most with chakra masking. The masked ninja was skilled. He used 2 short swords to block and attack his 3 enemies. He was graceful dodging a ninjutsu attack, some sort of water bullet. He hacked and slashed and made it look graceful. One of the 3 fell to a slash across his throat. The 2 remaining attackers intensified. They saw the writing on the wall. If they were to die they would take their killer with them. Naruto saw the masked ninja turn his attention to the better of the 2 remaining ninja. That left an opening for the other ninja to pounce. When the long sword arced, Naruto decided to toss his hat into the ring, just a bit. He attached a chakra string to the ninja's hand and tugged a bit, just a bit for the lethal blow to bounce off the masked ninja's armor. It got the masked man's attention, and his would-be killer wound up with a gaping throat wound. The one-on-one battle took a few minutes. The last remaining unmasked ninja was quite skilled with a blade. He also used lightning affinity chakra to punch up his attacks. But the masked ninja was winning, slowly but surely. It was an impressive battle to watch. When the masked ninja delivered a killing blow, he said, "I'm sorry. You were very skilled." He actually sounded apologetic. For a ninja, it was nothing strange to admire your opponent's strengths. But, Naruto concentrated on that voice. It was familiar. He'd heard it for years from one of his students, Number 1. It was good to know he was still alive. Naruto watched Number 1 immediately transition from battle to clean up. He sliced off one of his opponent's heads. Naruto decided to see how his old student was doing, without compromising his current identity. "Hey, what are you doing there?" Naruto used the Earth Country accent he'd developed over the last 6 months. At that, number 1 looked up, startled. His hand was ready to throw a kunai before he recognized that a mere civilian, a dirty farmer, was talking to him. Do not concern yourself. This man is a criminal from Waterfall Country. I am a bounty hunter of sorts. Do you have to hack their heads off? I must prove these criminals are dead, Master Farmer. Now, if you'll let me get back to my work. Yeah. Gruesome work. Bah. Give me a patch of daikon any day. Naruto walked back to his mule and continued on his way. Number 1 was still alive, and practicing his desired trade. Naruto had done a small, nameless service for his former student in saving him from a savage sword blow. It felt nice. Perhaps number 3 would be glad to know that number 1 was faring so well. The hunter in life was a tough one. But his student seemed to thrive. 6-on-1 and winning? Very nice work, even if Naruto couldn't say much for the boy's common sense. A ninja typically didn't plan to have these kinds of confrontations. But number 1 was always more about trapping and genjutsu. If a trap failed, then he just might wind up with a whole lot of angry ninja on his hands. 30 months pass. Naruto walked up to a civilian house, knocked on the yelled, and received a shouted admittance. He walked inside, just to be attacked by a soggy toy thrown at his head. Number 3's son was less than a year old, and he liked to stick everything he touched in his mouth, but he was also highly accurate in hitting whatever he wanted. Naruto had been pelted by toys, soft foods, soggy bits of clothing, you name it. He found he liked being, as number 3 jokingly put it, Uncle Naruto to the little sprog. The kid had the better features of number 3, cheeks and eyes, and his civilian wife, hair and ears. The little boy was doted upon and loved, and it just made Naruto happy to see it, normalcy. Today was the 27th birthday of his covering identity here in River Country, so, of course, number 4 insisted on holding a party. A big party. Naruto's exploits in the last few years training and testing techniques against masses of bandits and missing nin had netted them some fair amount of ryo, which they had used to purchase all this land. Number 3 enjoyed playing the role of a wealthy, minor daimyo, holding court over the farmers and merchants whose interests fell within his land. Naruto was here, of course, as the elder of 2 brothers. The wealthier and more desirable one. He was being put, as number 3 said, onto the meat market for perusal. In reality, gossip parties like this one, for seeing and being seen, were excellent occasions to gather rumors and unconfirmed intelligence. They were also fairly useful for disseminating information, too. Naruto had just returned from 2 months in Wave County spent in one of his bunkers. It was hard, nay, impossible, to design techniques to fight against people one had only ever heard described. He had books filled with ideas, some of which actually worked. But very little of it felt natural. 3 years spent planning, growing stronger, developing new techniques. Or rather turning old techniques into stronger, more finished attacks. He had a full complement of anti-sassery techniques now. He'd turned the ghost stories of his youth into tools to use against the puppeteer. The rumors of human puppets, and one who wielded metallic sand, were probably just rumors, but Naruto was ready if they were true. He was ready with an army. He had gotten much better at crafting heart stones for his puppets. He had developed new poisons. He had put together smaller and smaller micro-puppets. And he had learned some ninjutsu, and stopped hiding in bunkers all the time. Naruto, even without hauling out some of the puppets he kept in scrolls, or releasing heart stones he always carried on his person, was a fucking tough fighter. He might be missing a left leg, which was a vulnerability, but no one in the last decade or so had ever managed to turn it against him. Damn that foolish Hokage. Naruto stopped the grumpy thoughts and sat down to play with his little nephew, Usagi. The other guests would be directed outside to the rear terraces. Naruto could spend some time inside, getting into character like some sort of kabuki entertainer. Naruto, a woman's voice said, "It's so good to see you. Ko-energy, a pleasure. I can't believe you let him throw this horrible party. He loves to entertain, what can I say?" As much as number 3 loved his wife, she did not know about who Naruto really was. She did know that her husband was a retired ninja, though, but Naruto's secrets were his own. She thought the man was merely an older adoptive brother of her husband. Am I very early? Not for this thing. The invitations say 1 o'clock. But the ghosts start showing at noon. Thankfully I didn't get an invite, just a verbal show up then kind of thing. Yes, for having money, my husband hasn't much adapted to its strictures. Unlike your family, he did not come from money. Koeniji was the youngest daughter of a local daimyo, child number 17 of 19. She had to marry well or she wouldn't have had a pot to piss in. That was when number 3 walked into the room. Naruto, how nice of you to come early. Have some lunch. Thank you, Siaki. I would enjoy that. Grab up that handful of trouble and let's find some food. The meal was pleasant. Koeniji talked about some of the guests who would be coming. Siaki mocked them. Yosagi put everything within reach in his mouth. If it wasn't food, he'd pull it out and throw it. Hard. Usually at Naruto. Instead of feeling irritation, it made Naruto feel joy. It was a fun distraction, to keep from thinking about an uncertain future. He was powerful in a military sense, but Madara or Pain would likely beat him in a straight fight. He worried about the power he was trying to accumulate in other disciplines, intelligence power, economic power, such as this estate run by number 3, and eventually political power. The strongest ninja in the world couldn't fight very well if the power that be decided to starve him out, deprive him of resources, use artillery to bombard his likely locations. Political power, such as his identity of a T-country warehouse manager getting elected village mayor, took time to build, but then it began to repay the investment, maybe. Too many moving pieces, too many ways to go. Should he try to out-shinobi these Akatsuki? Or should he engineer an embargo on Rain Country, where all the rumors put these strangely powerful ninja at various times and places? Or invent a war between Earth and Rain? Those rock ninja were such bastards it wouldn't take much provocation. No, this was better, simpler. Getting pelted with silverware and having a nice, restful meal. So, which of these young ladies coming are on the hunt for a husband? Koeniji just laughed. For someone of sufficient means, like yourself, my brother-in-law, all of them. The young ladies, looking to impress, would serve up their best stories, the best fodder. Naruto found all these people throwing themselves at him, distasteful. But he had to gather intelligence, and sometimes gossip was more suggestive than cold, hard fact. The world had changed. It was hard keeping track of things some days. Conventional truths weren't always useful anymore. Things were different. Naruto was now 18 years old, even if his character was 27. Jiraiya of the Sun-In had been the 5th Hokage in Hidden Leaf for just over 2 years. The legend of Taro of the river got bigger with every passing month. Number 3 had taken a public name, Namikaze Siaki, a fairly common surname in these parts but meant more as a tribute to Naruto's true heritage, and settled on a large tract of land in river country with his wife and 9-month-year-old son, effectively retiring as a ninja. But in fact serving as the deepest cover type of operative. It was all to a purpose. Sasori still breathed air he should not be entitled to. Naruto hadn't invented a painkiller or Madara killer even after years of trying. The military power seemed too fragile, too little as Naruto began to understand the wider world. That hadn't been an easy conclusion to draw. But Naruto had exhausted what he knew of military might. He'd even had a fucking visit with the Kyuubi no Kitsune. The short answer, the beast was useless for Naruto's purposes save for permitting Naruto an almost limitless amount of chakra. Even that came at a cost. Naruto had to fight all the time to maintain excellent chakra control. If he went a day without using chakra cables, the next day was twice as hard to work the technique. Plus, aside from the Kyuubi in his mind addressing Naruto as a damned cripple, when Naruto attempted to test the demonic chakra, as Gaara had done at the Chunin selection exams, his body was racked with pain, specifically the stump of his left leg. It was almost as if the Kyuubi was attempting, and failing, to regrow the leg. The Kyuubi's power was useless for the puppeteering lifestyle, and for someone with a massive disability. These 3 years hadn't yielded much. The killer techniques hadn't materialized. He seemed stuck in a rut. He maintained his vigilance with a wide spying network, but there hadn't been a single blip on the Sasori front. But the ninja would pop up sometime soon. The Jinchuriki were out there. Naruto was having all of them, save for the seven-tail that he still hadn't managed to track down, watched. Number 3, his wife and child accompanied Naruto out of doors. The guests were already here. Naruto, introduced as Namikaze-yun or Naruto to his friends, a little joke of number 3's, met with every buxom woman in the crowd. He heard many stories. Ninja exploits tended to be particularly bandied about in civilian areas, whereas ninja tended to tell mocking stories of their opponents or their political masters, Hokages, and daimyos. My older brother just came back from a ninja village, you know, a young blue-haired girl exclaimed, twittering the whole time. The village hidden in the waterfall. It sounded so interesting. Really, Yun said. Is he a trader or a merchant of some type? Yes, he was buying animal skins to make into leather. It was just total luck he heard about hidden waterfall and their need to sell a mass of skins. He couldn't take any pictures of course, as they insisted it was a military location and very secret. He only got to see a little bit of the place, but he said it was massive. A couple thousand people could live inside the caves they use. A village inside caves. That sounds very uncomfortable, Yun said, playing up his role as a young nouveau-riche noble. You'd think so, but he said it was very nice. They somehow got light in from outside. And he just took in everything. All the ninja everywhere. He'd never seen so many, all different kinds of headbands. Like a good noble, time to flaunt some knowledge, and verify if this girl was just making up stories out of whole cloth. Really? I thought each kind of headband belonged to a different village. I don't know about that. But my brother described a few of them. They sounded very different, except all of them had a long line running through the middle of the design. Naruto's first thought was, missing ninja. This was an interesting tip. Perhaps. If I ever get up that way, I'll try to see if they'd give me a tour. That got the girl laughing, as ninjas didn't give tours. Can I get you another drink? Yun asked. The party continued for hours. Indeed, it was growing dark before number 3 got efficient in suggesting that people head off for the night. It had been a garden party during the afternoon, not a dinner party. Dinner was for family only. As Naruto was digging into the main course, roasted fish and vegetables, he got a blast of information in his mind from a dispelled shadow clone. The spy network had turned up a lead at long last. The one-tailed Jinchuriki, Sabaku no Gara, had been kidnapped. The puppet assigned to Suna had actually caught sight of Sasori's battle puppet. Siaki, can I talk to you? Is everything alright? Number 3 stood and began moving from the dinner table. In the hallway leading to the main door, Naruto explained the new information. Siaki looked apologetic and began to speak, but Naruto waved him quiet. This is no longer your fight. You have a child and this cover to maintain. I will handle the battle. You work on the wealth accumulation. You are working on another type of power for our plans. Be careful, sensei. As much as I can. It was only hours from river country into wind, and a few more hours to meet up with the shadow clone attempting to track Gaara's kidnappers. The shadow clone doing the tracking dispelled. They were in a cave. As Naruto assimilated the memories, he realized he was close, very close, only 2 kilometers away. He began to run as he prepared mentally for battle. Sasori was likely very close, as well as his Akatsuki partner. The puppeteer used to be partnered with Orochimaru, and had been partnered with that terrorist bomber from Hidden Rock before Naruto captured Itachi. Now, who knew who the partner might be? He catalogued his resources. He had a variety of puppets and scrolls. He had heartstones in a wide variety of styles. He had poisons and micro-puppets and some devastating ceiling array monstrosities and a few special surprises designed for someone like Sasori. He had the flowing Red Death. It had worked against Kisame and Itachi, but Sasori was likely a whole class above those other ninja. It was a last resort. He tried not to think of how badly things would have to go before needing to use that technique. He ran. He cleared his mind. The longer these bastards had control of Gaara, the less likely a good outcome was possible. He fought the battle in his head and hoped that the art of war would serve him well this day. As Naruto arrived at the cavern entrance, a blonde ninja emerged. Deidara, if Itachi's descriptions were accurate. Another puppeteer, yeah? My art is better than anything you can put together, Jinchuriki. Sasori knew about Naruto as a puppeteer. Naruto hadn't been sure, but now it was obvious. The spymaster who had captured number 2 would have extracted everything possible before killing her. I've studied your art, as well, Rock Ninja. Perhaps you'll like my advances. Naruto swiped blood across a ceiling scroll and threw the thing at Deidara. A second later, a startled Kabuto appeared in a poof of smoke. When he was 15 feet away from Deidara when he hit the ground, the hundreds of exploding seals on Kabuto's body all exploded at the same time. Naruto was a good ways away and it still threw him off his feet. Deidara had been preparing a clay monstrosity, an explosive of some sort, but he was blown into the hard stone around the cavern's mouth. The half-formed explosive remained on the ground. Deidara was bleeding from his mouth and ears. Naruto went on the offensive. His chakra strings invaded Deidara's body. It paralyzed him, and then brought him up and began moving him as if he were severely injured. Something darkened the cavern entrance and then waved at Deidara. The former rock ninja limped over, slowly, shaking a bit and weaving. The blood was genuinely cascading from his mouth, nose, and ears. He was dying from the shock of the explosion. But, as long as he was alive, Naruto could use him. Other chakra strings began etching on Deidara's flesh underneath his cloak. He wouldn't be able to cover the Akatsuki member in 500 seals, as Kabuto had been, but he'd managed a few before Deidara reached the end of the line. It wasn't a surprise when the plan failed. Sasori was good enough to detect the foreign chakra in Deidara's body. Naruto didn't know exactly what had happened, but he felt Deidara's body almost disintegrate. From where the chakra strings had been, Deidara lost the entire left side of his body. A few moments later, Naruto had his answer. A pale ninja in a black cloak emerged at the mouth of the cavern. He wasn't human, not any longer. He had a preserved sheen to him. The rumors about Sasori's experiments with dead ninja were true. Even when he'd been a mere kid visiting Suna once a week, people in the hidden village passed around stories like this as campfire fodder to scare the kids. But it wasn't a horror story. It was true. When a blast of blackish-grayish sand erupted from his cloak pockets, Naruto had his final confirmation. The third Kazekage had been turned into a puppet. Naruto had long prepared for this possibility. Naruto drew a long, thin scroll from his pocket. His already bleeding thumb wicked across it. Ugly met black stones tumbled to the ground. Naruto attached chakra strings to them and threw a volley of 6, each as heavy as an ancient-style cannonball, at the human puppet. The metal grains flew out of their controlled attacking formation and stuck inches deep to each of the magnets. The magnets thudded with some force against the human puppet, and stuck. The human puppet was almost knocked off his head with the force. It wasn't a perfect defense. Naruto had to duck and dodge the smaller amount of metallic sand that flew at him. He knew better than to let any of it touch him. A few hundred grains of that stuff, properly controlled, could flay the skin off his bones. More chakra propelled magnets into the stream of the sand. Naruto used up another 5 magnets capturing what he could. He could only hope that the human puppet was out of sand, that he could destroy this puppet, and move on to its master, but that was too optimistic. Sasori was still inside the cavern, of course. He was a thinking opponent. He'd just seen one of his most powerful creations neutralized. The human puppet withdrew back into the cave. Naruto had his remaining dozen magnets arrayed around his body in case of another, sudden attack. But, this time a familiar, hateful visage filled the doorway. It was Sasori himself and his battle puppet. You have the luck of the damned, Uzumaki. Shall we see what kind of destruction we can create? Naruto asked. The Sasori puppet shook its massive head from side to side. Such a stupid ninja, but such good fortune. I myself made it impossible to continue my important work. We're down quite a few rings thanks to you, but we needed Deidara's for our festivities today, and I just shredded it with my puppet's metallic sands. Your cleverness in getting me to attack my colleague has saved you this day. I must withdraw immediately, but I will enjoy watching you wither and die very soon. I'll be back for Gaara later. For now, he's yours. Try not to let him die. We still need the Shukaku. The massive puppeteer was surprisingly fast. He disappeared even as all of his instincts were telling him to engage pursuit. But, Gaara was still inside. Why was he left inside without a fight? Naruto wouldn't put it past Sasori to have trapped the place. Was there some other reason, something more sinister? He shelved the question and pulled out a heartstone and gave form to an Earth-type puppet clone. Such an affinity would enable it to better detect and avoid any traps Sasori might have laid. He took over control and sent the puppet inside. Within minutes Naruto found and had his puppet disable 6 traps, none lethal, but all would have been severely injuring. Gaara was deep inside the cave and not conscious. It was an odd room, set up for a ritual of some sort. The puppet surveyed the room, allowing Naruto to get some idea of its shape and dimensions, and checked again for traps. The puppet scooped up Gaara and carried him out. The small young man shifted a bit when he entered the dying light of the afternoon. Naruto formed up a pair of shadow clones, which were far less resistant than his puppet clones and might have been injured disarming a trap, and had them carry Gaara. He did this to maintain the secrecy of the puppet clone technique. When he dispelled the puppet, he stooped over and picked up the heartstone. One made for permanency could be reused again and again, it was only those made quickly for the flowing red death technique that had a single use. Naruto and his unconscious rescuee set out into the desert, not toward Suna. The place and its protections didn't exactly inspire confidence at this time. No, Naruto would take Gaara, the current Kazekage, to a bold hole to rest up and heal. And to answer some questions. That's it for part 3. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.